This podcast episode is with Professor Dootika Vats. She is an associate professor at IIT Kanpur, and I'm going to read her bio here. Before this, she was an NSF postdoctoral fellow at the University of Warwick. She is also a faculty associate at ICTS Bangalore, so International Center for Theoretical Physics. She holds a PhD in statistics from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. She graduated in 2017. She also holds two master's degrees, one from the University of Minnesota and another one from Rutgers University, both masters in statistics. She did her BA from Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi, and she did her BA in mathematics. And her research interests currently are Markov chain, Monte Carlo simulations, importance sampling, Bayesian computation, proximal methods, and Bernoulli factories. Professor, so just a bit of some context, I met Professor Dootika at the Explore conference that happens at my home university, Ashoka University. And I was chatting to her, and she seemed very, very cool and fun to talk to. So I decided to invite her to this podcast. Um, Enjoy this episode. How is IIT Kanpur? I know I said that
Uh,
start chronologically, but yeah.
Best place to be.
I see.
Uh, it's really very lovely. I mean, there are obviously with any institute or place, there are some pros, there are some cons, but overall, I've had a fantastic experience. I think there are certain things that make Kanpur slightly different from the other IITs, and one of them primarily is the social environment is slightly different from my understanding from how some of the other IITs are. And
Right.
part of the reason I think is because it's IIT Kanpur is sort of like a silo or separate from the rest of the city because there's not a lot of similar industries or tech or other industries outside. And so most
Mhm.
people in IIT Kanpur, most faculty particularly, don't necessarily have a social circle outside of the campus because
I
it's
see.
very difficult to find similar minded people in Kanpur. Kanpur being not necessarily having a lot of tech, us being an IIT, a tech institute. And so that what that does is that there used to also not be a lot of cafes or restaurants or places, etc., like many years ago. And so the culture has been like, if you want to have a social gathering, you invite people home, you get people, to sit in your living rooms and chit chat, which is sort of like slightly more traditional, rather than let's go out for dinner, which is not really as common.
I
Uh,
see.
so that from a social perspective, that creates a slightly different environment, which is, it has its pros and cons. I think it's really nice to have that sort of culture, but I would also like to be friends with non-academics, which is a little challenging to do in Kanpur as a city. And then academically, it's been really fantastic. Especially for me in my area, in statistics, it's been really amazing to be here as opposed to other places where there's not a lot of vibrant statistics happening. So that's been a real unique feature.
Do you mean statistics happening in India or around the world in general?
No, in India, around the world, I mean, US, Europe, UK, Australia are slightly different. There are more places, there are a lot more statisticians and different, there are separate departments of statistics and focuses like that. So a lot of people, a lot of programs, undergraduate, masters, PhDs. And in India, outside of ISI, IIT Kanpur is the only other place where you have an undergraduate program, a master's program, and a PhD program amongst research institutes. I mean, almost all universities have separate departments of statistics for sure. But amongst research institutes, IIT Kanpur outside of ISI is the only such place. So from that perspective, having a community of statisticians, from nascent budding
Mhm.
statisticians to well-established statisticians, it's really lovely to be in such an environment.
I see. Do you prefer the, I mean, Indian academia, from what I've heard, is quite different from how academia in US might operate. So, or is that
Um,
true or not quite?
I mean, yes, of course, it's true because India is very different from the US, right? So, I mean, for any sub society to flourish within a society, it must not be tangentially different from the original society. Otherwise, flourishing and existing can be very difficult. So yeah, India is fundamentally, culturally, bureaucratically, every other way is different from the US, and hence uh, education and academia is also fairly different. Yes, and also because a lot of academic rules environments are not coming from the US; they are coming from Europe or Britain, to be specific. So from that sense, yes, of course, it's a very relatively different academic environment.
Do you prefer some aspects of this one over the one that you saw in States? Because from what I've read, at least, is that funding is a huge thing
Hmm.
over there, as in
Where?
in the US.
Hmm.
I don't know if Europe has a big funding thing, but at least US US does seem to have a funding issue. In the sense
Hmm.
that if your research isn't funded and let's say you're in an experimental science,
Hmm.
then it'll be quite problematic for you. You have to write
Yeah,
grants and you have to compete
yeah,
for grants rather. And there's
yeah.
also this pressure to publish enough work,
Hmm.
even if that would perhaps mean sometimes exploring less ambitious questions or
Yeah,
compromising on the quality in extreme cases, I suppose.
correct.
Um,
So I must then confess that, my experience comes from my experience and my
of course, yeah.
area, and my area is not experimental at all. And also, mathematics and statistics typically do not rely on funding as much because of, I mean, statistics more definitely does rely on funding a lot more than mathematics. But even in the US, I mean, a lot of the people I know and admire their work don't necessarily have external funding and external grants because the students are supported by the school, by their
Mhm.
schools, and not supported by them. And the only support they need is potentially a summer salary, and then they're also happy to take the summer off if they don't get a summer salary, for example. And so, from in the subspace of mathematics and statistics that I sort of live in and I've seen in the US, funding was never really a cloud over people's head. Now, the case is very different in biostatistics, which is very closer to statistics than mathematics. But then funding is very different in departments of biostatistics, where your salaries are going to be coming from grants as well.
Mm.
In most departments, I don't want to say that all departments, but in most situations. So that's definitely one thing. Funding is a challenge for places for in the US in areas where funding requires you to exist in academics. But if you don't require funding to exist in academia, then you're okay, which is true for most of math and statistics.
Mhm.
Um, on the other end, if we talk about publishing and publishing pressure, I mean, certainly the US does have a very active tenure system. Um, and it does require, about 6, 7 years of working towards your goals in a way that you're constantly productive, which might mean that there might be some lovely ideas that are fundamental that would require, let's say, 2, 3 years of or more of just marinating yourself in that problem. You don't really feel like you have the freedom to do that because, of course, your tenure case might not go through. um I mean, I'm not saying that the tenure system is one we should strive to get in India, but I think there are certain merits of tenure system. uh, there's a lot of demerits as well, but I wish some of them were in India as well. I mean, ISC, for example, has a tenure
Right.
system that they also enforce and keep, and they've done this for a couple of years now. But I do think that a couple of things that the tenure system does do, which sometimes can be missing, is it does give you as a young independent researcher, it gives you the habit of being productive. And so, yeah, sure, one can view that, okay, for 6, 7 years, I'm going to put whatever are reasonable ideas and thoughts out there. And then after that, I will pursue bigger projects that I am truly passionate about. And you can sort of take that conscious decision. But what it
Mhm.
also does then, it says it allows you, because you've gotten into the habit of being productive, that's actually a reasonably good habit. So after you've gone through a very painful, maybe filled with anxiety journey of 6, 7 years, and you finally do get tenure, that habit now remains with you. So you're in an environment and a community where young people are definitely being very productive. and you sort of get that energy, and your established habits are already also there. And so what will happen is you will pursue some of these more complicated projects while also taking time out for the smaller projects that you might give out to students,
Right.
who will continue to work on those. So you sort of get invested in a productive environment,
Right.
uh,
Here you're
which
talking
is
from your
useful.
own experience, as in like first-hand experience, or your
No, I mean, firsthand, I didn't go through a tenure system in the US because
so
I
with this
left.
5, 6 years in the sense that when you did actually work in that academia system, US man.
No, but I was a PhD student. I have no pressures of tenure, right? So I can't really speak from a first-hand perspective.
From the for the productivity side aspect I was talking about.
Even there, I mean, yes, it is certainly there, the urge to be productive, because the environment is so established that everybody, I mean, this is a, sorry,
Yes, no
there,
problem.
it becomes like socially very complicated as well. So from a PhD student point of view, the life is extremely different in the US versus India.
I see.
And
Also,
uh, in the US, you in most places, not all places, but you are treated like a full grown adult.
right.
And I mean socially. I mean, by the a department, you might be allowed to fail, as in, you might, have a setback in terms of a paper getting rejected and things like that, and that's obviously there. But you need to rent your own apartment, you need to pay your taxes, you need to pay the rent, you need to get your groceries, you need to do jhadu pocha katka bartan, you need to do the cleaning, and you're living the life of a student whose job it is to do research. So you are an employee, and your job is to be a student essentially. It's typically going to be an environment where you have low output monetarily in the short run, but in the long run, it's going to, after the 5 years, it's going to give you a little bit of a jump to higher access points that you wouldn't have gotten to if you didn't have a PhD. So it's a 5 year investment of a low ball salary maybe in the beginning, but then you get a trampoline jump that gives you access to higher things. And so you view it as a job, you view it as a responsibility, and culturally in most places it is that environment.
I see. So it's treated as a job.
It is treated as a
And
job.
treated as a job.
Yeah, you are held accountable for your own thesis, for your own PhD. There's a lot more ownership you have because it's your journey. And if my advisor or other advisors find that you're not working towards something, they say, fine, it's your life, it's your PhD. You're
Hmm.
not working, you'll figure it out. If you don't, too bad. So it's sort of like it's all on you because you are the adult here. You figure out how you want to go about doing things, and it's not the same here, and it's not the same by virtue of also logistics and also environment. As an advisor for various students, I try to give as much autonomy to students as possible, but there's still a lot I can't do here because of the fact that the students are in some sense treated as students and think of themselves as students. And as we started this conversation, you yourself said that as a student, one wakes up whenever one wants to, or so on and so forth on a Saturday, right? Which is fair. But but if I treat myself as a student, I'm going to allow myself to do childish, not so mature, not so responsible things because it's okay that I'm a student.
Hmm.
And we do that here because, students live in a dorm. Their rent is not their fees, of course, but their food, they don't have to make some. You go to the mess, you take food. There's some helpers around that clean their rooms for them. There's people, the whole community is set up to facilitate that you just do research, right? But I think what happens is the habit of being productive goes away.
Right.
Right? So you get into the sense where we've no other responsibilities. And if I don't have the habit of being responsible for even the small tasks, I'm sometimes have to really urge myself to be responsible for the big task, like,
Even in a
getting
dormitory.
on. Even in a dormitory, I mean, you don't have those responsibilities you would have if you were renting your own place and
Yeah,
going,
sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you have minor responsibilities, I'm sure, like making sure you switch your fan off or something like that. Um, but I mean, from the scale of if you're leaving a full-fledged financially independent life where you are also renting and being a human adult, um, as opposed to a PhD student life, but I'm sure there are responsibilities students have towards their family and friends and so on, and that's certainly very valid. But the day-to-day small responsibilities that I think give you the habit of being responsible and productive, those are not necessarily there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the environment becomes a little bit more relaxed, and I can't necessarily. I mean, my students are lovely; they take ownership as well, but it requires a lot more effort for them to get there, a lot more motivation for them to take that responsibility.
Yeah. I think it goes back to how education is viewed in, or rather, perhaps not viewed, or rather how it's carried out in India versus US.
Hmm.
I think, at least in my case and from what I've seen, your bachelor's degree does not really seem to be, there isn't much of, there isn't as much of a choice as a student studying in India would get as opposed to an student in the US, I think. Usually students, as in, very typical kahani, doctor, engineer, or lawyer.
Hmm.
And it's not, I won't say forced. I mean, a lot of cases it is forced upon, but in a lot of cases that choice is heavily, ki ye karo, give the
Yeah,
JEE, give the NEET
yeah,
exam, give this entrance exam. And so
yeah.
when you do give these exams and you do the degree, it's not always coming from a place ki, okay, I'm choosing this actively every single day. And
Hmm.
so it's difficult to be responsible towards something when you aren't really choosing it for yourself because you don't quite feel responsible for it.
Yeah.
Unlike a project that you making a
Mhm.
choice to invest time in it. You're making a choice,
That's
catch up,
right.
pursue this problem and
And
this
somebody's
random
holding
task.
you accountable for it as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I sort of cut some slack for college because we're dealing with teenagers essentially, but PhD students are 24, 25-year-olds. And some students who just about going to college may not be old enough to vote. So there's that. So they're a very young age. But in the I mean, I'll go as far as to say, like in the US, also getting a college degree is not necessary to lead a good life either, right? So,
Does not
uh,
necessarily lead to a good life, you're saying.
yeah,
I
I
see.
mean, there's plenty of people who have had a high school education that are very successful as real estate agents,
Mhm.
as plumbers and very skilled carpenters and things like that, for example. And those are extremely respectable jobs in the US, which is not the same in the Indian landscape, right? So,
Oh, so there's not, the pressure is kind of different. Kya wahan par? In the
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. I mean, a lot of students who are coming to college are coming because they chose to go to college, not because
it's the
college was
next
an
step.
obvious thing
Yeah.
to do. Which is true in India, but not true in the US. Many students. I mean, I know professors whose children decided they don't want to go to college, and they were like, "Great, what do you want to do?" I want to do X in my life. I'll try and see if I can pursue that, and doesn't require college education, and they have no interest in it. It also goes back to how expensive college is, and people don't really want to go take on like massive college education loans and things like that.
I see, I see.
Yeah. So, comparing, so this is why like comparing academia in India versus academia in the US or other places is just so complicated because the countries are so different. The culture, and when I say culture, I mean social culture, on what our expectations are so different that it is obvious that academia will also eventually be different. We're just a subset of the same society.
I see, I see. Um, Although I think the reason I asked that question is because I'm at Ashoka, right? So
Hmm.
it's not exactly a traditional Indian college by any means.
Yeah.
And it's more following the US Wala model of
Hmm.
what a university is supposed to be, at least in the
Hmm.
American sense. But then
Hmm.
all of my professors have been trained in India. All of them have bachelor's degrees
Hmm.
from India. A lot of them have
Hmm.
PhDs from India. So
Hmm.
you have professors who were trained in India, or some of them, quite a few of them also have abroad PhDs. But you have
Hmm.
professors primarily trained in India who are trying to carry out the American university
Hmm.
um, vision. So it's a bit interesting because some of my classes are very, I suppose, similar to classes that you would have in a traditional Indian college, where there are set exams, 40% exams, 60% exams ka weightage, 40% assignments. and it's very old school. But then there are then there are classes that have no exams, and it's just project based, and it's walk-in office hours.
But
So,
Vedant, this is
hmm.
also true in the US. I mean, I've taught in the US. I've taught massive
Oh, I see.
classes of 150 odd students, relatively massive. And there is, you must give your course handout on day one. You must say what are your assignment mid-sem, end-sem distribution. Do I have a project? Do I not have a project? And I must follow that. And I did that. And then and most of it was also that. I mean, most of the courses I was a TA for example, had very strict guidelines and very strict like proper like weekly submissions and then exams and very set pattern. And I actually didn't really see many courses also because in statistics there were like capstone projects and things like that the students got to do.
Hmm.
There was maybe one course which was like a case studies course, sure. But then almost 90% of the other courses were just exactly how my classrooms, our classrooms are here.
Right. Oh, I see.
So, I mean, the assessment model in some sense is universal, right?
Hmm.
It's only when a topic allows you to be creative that you can be creative. But if I'm teaching a real analysis class, I don't think there's a lot of creativity I can bring to that in terms of, oh, you should go ahead and do projects. Because, it's going to be really challenging to get students to get real life projects. That's close to impossible. um, and enough that maybe one kid comes up with something really unique, but to have 40 students in a class come up with unique ideas that are relevant and also talk about analysis is very difficult. And also it's a tough concept, like it's a concept that takes a long time to understand and marinate, and so it's difficult to so you just need to like stick to the rigor of saying, okay, there are exams, I got to study for it, and I got.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit in doing that.
Yeah.
Although I would think is the reason we cannot think of other ways of testing because there is really no better way than an exam in the case of fundamentals like analysis, or is it because we've done this for so long, as in the
Yeah,
testing method?
those are great
So,
questions. And so from that point of view, an exam, like I think practice is the way to go
oh,
is
definitely,
to
right.
learn, right? And so now we can go into this idea of, okay, how do we ensure students practice? And one of the ways is exams, and there might be other creative ways, and people do try to sometimes bring in like new ways to do, like ensure students have the motivation to go ahead and do something beyond the classroom. But invariably, the solution both in India and abroad is indeed the fact that, okay, let's just have exams and go ahead and do that. But I mean, both. I mean, I have colleagues here. There's a Center for Learning here in IIT Kanpur, and there's like various things we explore and think about as to how do we actually do things that are slightly unique that don't necessarily require assessments, but
Oh,
engage with students. And for
right,
some
right.
of these theoretical, there's lots of things people do in like the engineering courses which get people to like do hands-on work,
Uh-huh.
um, which are just for fun maybe, but also have some learning involved. But when it comes to math and statistics fit be is okay. When it comes to math, it becomes really difficult because you just need to like put some hours and time in.
So, sir, okay, I have a question. I mean, I better it's a podcast, but
Yeah.
since have you guys, so in your experience, has it been the case that when you teach something, it becomes much more clearer to you yourself, or that your understanding of it increases a significant amount, or not?
100%. I mean, if there is a topic I want to learn better, I just volunteer to teach it.
Exactly.
That's it. Yeah. And I'll go so far as to say that it's not just the prep that makes it better, because sometimes I'm prepping for class, and I'm sort of writing something down. And I usually do type notes and go through it and make plots and have notes available
I see.
afterwards. And so for me, like my type notes are like the pristine way in which I want to be teaching, and I try to do that right before class so that I have something to emulate in class.
Mm-hmm.
So I do something in my notes, and then I go into class and I start talking. And as I'm like drawing something, I go, wait a minute, how does this work here? And so part of me is trying to explain, but part of me is trying to figure it out on the fly. as well. And then in 90% times I'm able to, and then 10% I go, wait a minute, something's off. And then as a community, I ask questions and I say, okay, I don't know what to do next. Can we help? Can we do this together? And then sort of figure out how to do it together, especially if it's a topic I'm teaching for the very first time.
Yeah, could you give an example if you have any, or if you were thinking
Um,
of one when you talked about this?
there are plenty. I've taught an optimization course multiple times, and it's a computing course, actually, a statistical computing course, which is basically the theory of sampling and optimization.
Right.
And there's a topic in it that's not well known, but I think is very powerful, called ratio of uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a way to sample from a distribution. And so how do you get a computer to sample from a distribution? This is the whole topic of sampling. And this particular method allows you to sample from the distribution. And you have so every time I teach this, and even today, when I teach this, I tell my students, I will give you intuition for every topic in this course, except this topic. I cannot tell you why this works, except for just the proof of it. I mean, the
Right.
proof I have, but the intuition, because you have given a distribution, to map it to a set, and the set gives you back this set is able to give you back
Huh.
samples. So what this mapping looks like and why this set gives you samples, that intuition always escapes me. Um, and the students, I mean, because I try to give as much intuition as I give math, the students get used to the intuition and then are always so disappointed in this topic because they go, I don't understand. I say, great, neither do I. Like, I have no idea why this works. I can tell you the proof works out. And in this one day, this kid, we were in, so part of our curriculum, we have a theory, we have 3 weeks of courses, sorry, 3 classes a week in this course, and then one class of lab so that we can actually implement these algorithms on a computer. And this one kid I don't want to get too technical, also I've forgotten the details, but this one kid says, but ma'am, on the set, if you draw a line on the set and then the points that fall on the line, something he was constructing. And I was ignorant. I was like, whatever. And this kid's not making any sense. Um, and then he asked me again, and I said, okay, I'm going to listen to you properly. And then it sort of was like, oh, this is such a brilliant way of understanding this. I hadn't even thought about it. And then, the next class, in my notes now, I've updated this intuition. Every time I need to think about this a couple of times, but I've updated the intuition and sort of like it brings a little bit more clarity to the topic. That's one of those I remember because I'd gone 4 years teaching that course. Every time saying, "Don't ask me intuition. I have no idea why this works." And now this kid says, "But it's a line. Points are on a line." I go, "Oh, I see. I see it now. I guess it's a line."
That's great.
Yeah,
It's nice to hear professors in class say, ki, okay, I do not know why this works or how it works. If you
yeah,
guys have a
yeah.
better idea or can figure out something, please share.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, I'm not shy of doing that. I mean, I'd be ready to do that very often. And so I don't want to be in a situation where like 90% of the algorithms, I got no idea how that works. But it's okay if it's okay if like 10% of them I go, I don't quite know why this works, but I can tell you the math, but I don't have an intuition on it, and that's okay.
So when I began studying math, it actually began. So my journey to maths and CS in general began from physics. I
Okay.
learned I was also doing JE coaching, and I learned in those classes that an electron can behave like a particle and a wave. And I remember that
Yeah.
moment was the moment, like curiosity struck, and I knew that I had to know why. And
Okay.
so one thing led to another, and I started studying math. And I had this idea that studying math has to be from the ground up, as in literally
Mm-hmm.
building the theory brick
Mm-hmm.
by brick. And so I began my math journey with picking up a logic textbook,
Mm-hmm.
which
Right.
was which is not quite ideal. There's
Yeah.
more to math than just the rigors of logic and the terseness
Right.
of logic.
Correct.
So 6 months into that, I learned, okay, maybe this is not the best approach.
Yeah.
And then it was even in my first and second year of college, I was very devoted to proofs or very devoted to
Mm,
rigor. So I would never write
mm,
fx to denote a
mm,
function. I would always write
mm,
f. I mean,
mm. Yeah.
that's very common to mathematicians, but physicists use
Right.
fx all the time.
Yeah. Ah, I see.
Which is to say, I
Okay.
was very devoted to proofs and the rigor. But
Mm,
it was only later when I started to realize, okay, I can do the proofs, but I
Hmm.
don't quite know why this works the way it does. I don't have a
That's right.
feeling,
Yeah.
intuition for it.
Yeah, correct. Mhm.
And I don't know if it's, I don't know how common it is amongst modern day mathematicians to value intuition as much.
Mhm.
Or perhaps people in your field, statistics, is intuition as valued as it perhaps was? Because before, and by before, I mean when math was not so divorced from physics or perhaps other more hands-on fields.
Uh, I mean, 100%. I think it's increasing. And I might be biased because I mean, intuition is the only way I get the new research. Um, but I think it's incredibly important. So the evolution of statistics as a field itself it gives an idea about intuition because statistics is a very weird field.
In what
Um,
sense?
so I'll give you an example. This is sort of a personal story, but my husband is a physicist
Hmm.
and he's a theoretical physicist. And so, when we were talking in the beginning, we were talking about some, science and things like that. And by the way, I'm a person who is barely interested in anything. So I am just about interested in statistics and the area that I'm interested in, and I have very little interest in other things. So
You mean academically, right?
academically, yeah,
Because your
I could.
page points out movie recommendations. I'm sure you're interested in other
Yes,
things.
I am interested in various other aspects of life, but academically, I'm not going to be like, oh, what a wonderful idea in biology. Like I'm
I
like
see.
whatever. It's just I just don't have a genuine curiosity. So I would go as far as to say I might be a good statistician, but I'm not a good scientist
I
in
see.
the general wholesome sense. And I've become better in the last couple of years, but still, I mean, I got too many other things I want to do than just science. So. Um, and so we were just talking, and he asked me like, what is an open problem in statistics? That is, a big problem that you would love to solve, or that's a groundbreaking problem for you, and that's a new discovery. Like, so what is the next big discovery that you would love to do? And I didn't know how to answer that question because the question itself was invalid. It was a completely invalid question. And I kept telling him that this is an invalid question. I mean, he had lots of ideas on what he wants to discover or would be very cool for him to
Mhm.
learn. And I'm like, that's the question is invalid. And it took us like hours of talking to really understand why that question is invalid. And I was saying, but we don't discover anything. We make up problems and then we solve the problems that we've made up. And so we're inventing a problem and then inventing a solution to a problem, and somebody else can invent a different solution to the same problem and call it a new invention. There is literally no discoveries we as statisticians are doing. We might help other scientists discover other amazing things. Like statistics was used to help understand that smoking indeed causes cancer or pregnant women shouldn't smoke. Right. There were statistical methods involved for the real life application, but as a field, statistics itself is a tool to another end. And so I just need to come up with new inventions that also includes inventing a problem.
That is new tools,
There are new tools,
which
exactly.
sometimes might lead to a new problem in this. कि अच्छा ये tool बना दिया, I can solve this new problem with this new tool.
Possibly, exactly. Yeah. So I shouldn't say inventing a problem, but sometimes even it is about inventing a problem. And nobody knew this was a problem to even think about. And now you've
Right.
sort of like just made it a problem to solve.
You can give
Um,
technical examples if you want. I'm sure whoever watches
yeah.
this will
I mean,
be
I'll
just
just
a
give you
mad
the example of
person.
regression, right? Like somebody said, it would be nice to fit a line through this data. That's an invention of a problem, according to me. Of course, it's also a way to solve a problem where if I want to understand the relation between two variables, that's a problem that already exists. That we want to understand the relationship between a classical example like heights of mothers versus heights of daughters. And somebody said, how about we fit a line to this, right? And that's the invention of a solution. And now that's one part of that invention. Then somebody else says, okay, how do we choose the best line? I now change my metric of what is best. I will change my line, right? So now the invention are there new better metrics of what makes the best line? And I invent a new metric that will give me another line. that
Hmm.
best fits a randomly observed data. And
Hmm.
so it's sort of like people, love, like, I'm not saying this is an active area of research anymore. It was maybe many years ago, but this is the way we sort of invent problems
In statistics, you're speaking
in
about.
in statistics. Now this is methodological statistics, right? We come up with new methodologies to solve problems, right? There's also pure theoretical statistics, which is essentially maybe like very hardcore applied probability, where people are studying behavior of this random line. So somebody came up with the best methodology. Somebody came up with the line that answers that best methodology. And now theoretically, we might go study this line as a random object because our data might be random. So our line will keep on being random, our best line. And so somebody might go study this object theoretically. And that's uses like large amount of mathematical tools. Uh, and there's no discovery there, there's no invention there, there's discovery of results, right? And those
Hmm.
are certainly discoveries. And theoretical statistics is definitely connected to methodological statistics in the sense that if I develop a new methodology, I better know there's good theory for it, otherwise what's the point? But there's also theoretical statistics that exists as a field, that people study the theory of known things and establish known results. Establish results for
For their
known
own sake.
lines. Yeah, for their own sake as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
For example, you said the topic that you said you didn't quite have intuition for the 4 times
Hmm.
you taught it. I'm assuming a theoretical statistician would be interested in the underlying theory that generates that result. As in, you had that
Right.
method,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Or again, we take like a regression line example, or if you know Bayesian statistics a little bit, then
not at all.
in
But okay,
okay.
I'll try my
So
best.
now let's stick to the regression line then. So if I have a regression line, and if I want to like estimate, or if I want to understand that as the data increases, whether this regression line is going to remain constant, whether it converges, the line itself converges to a known underlying relationship or not, right?
Right.
And so that requires maybe a slightly separate mathematical understanding. So, for example, the popular lasso, which is a particular way to fit a regression line.
Popular lasso is a method you're saying.
Yeah, lasso is a method. So the lasso regression is a method of what's called penalized regression,
Right.
and that satisfies one definition of best,
Hmm.
right? And so there are once that came about, theoretical folks said, okay, I want to actually understand, as data increases, what is the behavior of this line? Does it actually converge to like the true underlying relationship,
Right.
or does it not, right? And so that became a very, very prolific area of research for a while, like a decade or two ago.
Hmm. I see. I see. I see.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about pedagogy, I did have
Yeah.
um,
Sorry,
uh,
I got derailed, but yeah.
no, please. I prefer my podcasts. Like if you watch the ones that I've
Yeah,
posted, they're all very like conversational. So
I
we
see.
keep on hopping from topic to topic. But I was just curious. Do you think it's a good idea to get students to teach? Because so one thing that I'm doing this semester, I'm part of the math help desk. So whatever doubts students have in their not necessarily math courses, even econ courses with some convergence like
Mhm.
math related topic, they just come and they
Mhm.
ask me.
Mhm.
So and the topics usually aren't too complicated. In the
Yeah,
sense they're first second year math topics which a student can handle. I think to teach at
right.
least. I don't have to
Yeah,
be a PhD. So,
yeah.
but what I did realize is that teaching really, really helps me really understand something well. So
Hmm.
even like small things, when we put a modulus in an argument and we say it doesn't really matter, as in we don't even, the writer doesn't, in the textbook, the writer doesn't even tell ki, acha, why can we just put a modulus and not even comment? Why is it trivial? I have to
Hmm.
explain those things when I'm teaching someone
Yeah,
live because I'm
yeah,
writing the argument in front of them and they will ask
yeah.
me, "Acha, modulus क्यों है यहाँ?" And I
Yeah.
better know why that modulus is there.
Totally, totally.
So I was just curious. is it, do you think students should teach more often during courses, or is that something that should be more encouraged as of course, problem solving is the best way, I'd still say. You can't
Mm-hmm.
substitute it for anything. But I think teaching does have its own role to play. Um,
Mm-hmm.
do you think in courses it would be helpful to have incentives for students to teach each other, teach outside of classes,
Yeah.
as a way to learn, or what do you think?
Yes and no.
Mhm.
So yes, 100% for those who are truly interested. But there are situations where I know young students and young not so young people who actually are not in who are ineffective teachers.
Like
And
they aren't
so
able
if
to teach well.
they aren't able to teach well, but all and in a student situation, I'd also be worried whether students are teaching correctly.
Of
So
course.
so, given that a student knows things well and has a genuine interest in 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 ensuring that let me say this, has an empathy towards this other student, so has an empathetic understanding of what is are the things that the student might not be able to understand. So sometimes we don't like you're talking about the modulus, right? You were able to acknowledge that this modulus sign has appeared somehow and needs explanation. But there might be other students who just, because it was point blank clear to them, it was very, very obvious. And then they don't have that sort of underlying empathetic phase or direction in their own personality, in their own life. They're not able to actually understand how is it that somebody doesn't understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if there is a little bit of that you can actually put yourself in the other person's shoes and see something for exactly what it is and not come in with your own journey, then I think it's a very good experience because you then also do well for your students around you and also get really good insights and get good great clarity as well. So yeah, in principle I really like the idea, but I'd be a little wary of also students sometimes not being very mature might say things like a younger or like a student who doesn't understand comes up to you, say, could you explain this to me, is very intimidated and doesn't want to come to the instructor or the TA. And if another student who's teaching this person says, how could you not even know this,
Yes. Yeah.
it's going to break that student's morale down completely. Because if an instructor said something like this, it would be horrible as well. But at least there is a power dynamic, right? So you sort of say, okay, well, the instructor knows so much that's why he or she thinks that this is trivial, right? But if my co-student also says that is this effectively calling me an idiot, then that just means I'm an idiot, and maybe you're not, right? Maybe, and most likely you're not. So I think it's sort of those sort of they're sort of making sure that the environment is secure and safe, and the people
Mm.
doing it are cognizant of the way they maintain themselves and
Yeah.
do have an empathetic understanding. There are lots of ifs there, but if this environment holds, then I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
Do you think we give as much emphasis to teaching as much as we should? I know that's a broad question, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
elaborate and give some context. I think it's a bit surprising to me how, the typical track is you do your PhD, you do your postdoc, and then you get a
Mm-hmm.
faculty position, and then your job is divided into, typically teaching for some time, research work for some time, and if you have some logistical managerial positions that you hold.
Yeah.
It's strange to me that we train people really, really well for research. Of course, we
Mm-hmm.
can debate what really well training means. Are we siloing people into this one research field? वो बात का
Yeah.
conversation है. But we train people really well for research, but teaching is not quite emphasized.
Yeah.
And what I've tend to notice is, of course, I'm coming from my limited experience. I'm just a third year away, but from what I've noticed, those who do well in research, of course, go further up the academic positions, or rather they climb the academic ladder higher, and others tend to wean out or tend to explore other things. And so you may not necessarily get the best teachers. You may get
Mm-hmm.
people that are really, really good at research, but perhaps
Mm-hmm.
not the best at teaching or not the most empathetic towards students. Like I've had
Mm-hmm.
professors who find it very hard to explain certain concepts because
Mm-hmm.
to them it's become so intuitive and basic at this
Mm-hmm.
point that it's very, very
Yeah.
hard to understand what exactly the student is finding difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, do you think there should be a component of perhaps if someone is doing research, training them to be a, or perhaps pursuing the academic path, there should be a component of training them to be a good teacher. And I know TA-ships are kind of what, and graduate assistantships are supposed to
Hmm.
be doing that,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's emphasized as much as it should be, training of a teacher.
Hmm.
And I think it is quite important, right? You're literally training the next generation of mathematicians or students or whoever it is. So you better know what you're doing in terms of teaching
Hmm.
ethics because you can very well shape who will pursue math further, what kind of problems they solve.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think of? There's a lot of thoughts, so you can jump on any.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, well, I mean, yes, I think effective teaching has to be a reason, one of the important criteria to ensure, or when you're hiring faculty, when you're maybe even assessing faculty in terms of, whether they should progress in their career ladder or not. Does it actually happen? Not always.
Achha,
Um,
matlab?
so even like so for example, I don't know if Ashoka has like student evaluation reports and things like that,
Can you elaborate?
where
I'm not quite sure there.
so at the end of the semester, do you fill a survey on how effective the class or the
Oh yeah,
instructor
yeah, yeah,
was,
yeah. We have
right?
those.
So now the question is that data actually being used to assess the quality of teaching, and is that being used to when the question of whether the faculty should be promoted or not, is Ashoka doing anything about that data
Yeah.
or not, right? And often that's not, I mean, it depends from institute to institute. Most institutes don't necessarily take cognizance of how good or bad the teaching was, um, unless it is very, very bad or very, very good. And if it's
I see.
something's really, really bad, maybe, some decisions might be made to deter or to talk to the faculty, or it's very, very good, then you get, some teaching awards or things like that. Um, this is also somewhat of a flawed system. The student surveys, it's also typically known to be very biased against women, at least in the US.
Mm.
And so it's not a perfect system, definitely. Also, it's also known to be very biased towards faculty who give better grades. I mean, who give grades more easily, who give
Ah,
A's more easily. It's typically biased towards them. But there is a confounding variable there as well. I feel like the faculty who give A's very easily are also faculty who care more about the students' learning than just the grades that they get. And so then
I
that might
see.
actually factor into the way they teach. So I think the student surveys is a complicated thing, but different. So it's very common in maths and statistics, I think, for different institutes to actually have a teaching talk for a faculty candidate. So we have that at IIT Kanpur,
Okay.
where a candidate who comes in, a faculty candidate, gives two talks. One is a research talk, and one is a teaching talk. The teaching talk is essentially like a teaching demonstration.
Ah.
So it's like a 50-minute, you choose a topic that's in a curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
and you sort of do a 50-minute classroom demonstration of that 50-minute topic.
It's like an annual thing, semester-wise thing.
No, even we have a faculty who applies to the department and they're shortlisted to
I
come
see,
in.
I see, I see. It's like a test.
Before we
Of
hire
teaching.
them, there is a research talk and there is a teaching talk.
I see.
And we're not the only ones. Most math departments do this. Um, and in fact, I'll be very honest with you, the research talk also, even if they don't have a teaching talk, the research talk in the first 20 minutes of every research talk should be a description of the problem statement, right? Which should be amenable to first to second year PhD students.
PhD students, okay.
Yeah, first
Yeah.
to second year PhD students. And if the first to second year PhD students are not able to understand your problem that you're trying to solve, then we have a person who's possibly not very effective in the way they're communicating their ideas. I mean, this is the talk you've prepared for your life, right? For your career. And so if this should be your best foot forward, and if you're not able to, then we can make an assessment. Okay, this person might not be an effective instructor. But even at least at IIT Kanpur, we have a teaching demonstration as well, which is which is very useful to sort of understand. It's not necessarily an assessment of whether the person teaches well or not. It's also an assessment of, okay, what philosophy do they view these topics,
Yeah.
and whether that philosophy aligns with our philosophy. For example, if I'm teaching, like if I come in and teach k-means clustering or some other, I don't know, some other algorithm or TSNE algorithm, which is a visualization algorithm or something like that. I can teach it from a very algorithmic point of view, right? That do this, do this, do this. You have these data, you find some cluster means, and then you find the nearest neighborhoods, and then then you sort of repeat and iterate, and that gives you k different means and clusters for each of those data.
Yeah.
That's a very algorithmic way of explaining it.
Right.
Now, us being a statistics and data science focused group, we're not a write an algorithm focused group. So our undergraduate degree, for example, focuses on making sure students understand what is the math behind these algorithms. So from that perspective, we are going to be like, okay, well, no, you're doing k-means. What is the goal? And what is our objective function? What is the function we're trying to optimize? And that feeds into our goal. And then do I know if that objective function is convex or not convex? And what does that say about the problem statement? How should I start my algorithm of k-means? Which local minima will it actually converge to? I mean, these are then all of the questions that we start talking about, right? Because we are talking about it from a mathematically accurate and then practically useful perspective. And so then we'll go to the actual problem and say, okay, how do I make sense of these k-means in this particular data setup? Can I use this in a supervised way? Those are all of the other data science questions. But then you also have the more statistical and mathematically rooted questions as well. And so that's a particular philosophy that, for example, we like to follow because we also look at the math of it very closely. And a computer science perspective might be like, what is the computational complexity of this algorithm? Maybe that's a question of interest, and that's another philosophical take on the same topic. And so the way you view the topic tells us a little bit about what kind of philosophy you have about these things, and also it tells us, of course, the teaching demonstration also tells us whether you are an effective instructor or not. I mean, that also is certainly true.
Do you think there should be separate tracks for faculty and rather research and teaching? Should they be a bit more, as in some people might really, really prefer to research and might be really, really good at it and may not be the best teachers, whereas some people may be excellent teachers, but may not be the most productive researchers in whatever that word means today.
And some people might be both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you think there should be more freedom between switching between tracks or
I think it's a complicated. I think that's that's slightly complicated. There's many complications also within the Indian environment. I mean, Ashoka is private, so Ashoka can do whatever it wants probably. But we are government employees on a salaried structure essentially. Right? I mean, we're an autonomous institute, so not government employee in like the usual sense, maybe, but certainly all the merits and benefits of being a government employee, which means you have like a salary structure. And so I think the social aspects of some of these things one has to take care of, right? So is it then okay that, okay, do I still view as an institute, do I still view let's say a person who's like a teaching responsible faculty versus a research responsible faculty? Are we treating them as same individuals on the same pay level, for example? If they're not on the same pay level, one is higher, one is lower, why? How do I define that? And if they are on the same pay level, can we also ensure that socially they're treated to be the same level? Because as a society, we have this reverence towards the frustrated scientist, right? Image that, oh, this person's doing amazing science and so is holed up in their labs the whole time, or in their office, or their chalkboards are filled with mathematical equations. And it's a very romantic idea of what a scientist looks like, and we actually revere it. We put this idea on a pedestal. We don't necessarily put the idea of a beautifully instructive instructor on a pedestal. We say, okay, well, in at least in the US, there's a common idea where you say, well, what do college professors really do? I mean, they have to teach 4 classes a week. They go in, they do 4 hours a week, and then they get, $100,000 salary or $150,000 salary, and that's all they're doing. Socially, that's the understanding of what a college professor does, which is totally untrue. But that's the idea. Like, why do they get paid for the rest of the 36 hours when they only teach 4 hours a week? Okay, fine, you put in 4 hours of office hours. Fine, you do 2 hours of other work, writing emails. Why are we paying you for 30 other hours a week? Right? And so there is this, it's sort of like, how do you ensure the social structure remains healthy and coherent? I think that would be, in principle, I think it's a great idea to have teaching faculty and research faculty. But I would also want it to be an environment where there's no suddenly strata defined by these two different types of positions, which I think is really difficult in an Indian environment.
I see. So, देखो मेरे सारे questions are very idealistic because I'm just a third year. So I get to be this way for the next
Yeah,
at
sure.
least 2-3 years of my life, or hopefully all of it.
Yeah, sure. No,
So
it makes me, it's in some sense, as we get older, we become more jaded and cynical because we've sort of tried our own things, and then we realize that this was a utopian idea that could never work in a real. And so, sometimes I'm not as old, but still I'm old enough where there are a lot of cynicisms that come in that I'm not sure if this will work because I know these issues will come up, right? But that's also sometimes not a very healthy perspective to have because cynicism is what makes it difficult for progress to happen, right? So there may be a sort of a utopian idea of how a world should work is always good to have so that we can at least strive to work in that direction while also having a healthy amount of cynicism where you say, okay, I know there's going to be these challenges that come up, right? So that allows you to know what might go wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think a more accurate word would be skepticism, as in when your skepticism converts to cynicism,
Yeah,
perhaps you have to
right.
be one should be more wary of that.
Totally.
One example that I keep going back to, and it's very idealistic example, but still, when Einstein came up with his general theory of relativity, gravity was considered a solved problem. But you probably know the story since.
I have no idea. No.
Okay, so
Like I said, I have very little interest in
no, you
other
said no, you're
sciences.
married to a physicist, so
But that doesn't mean I listen to him.
okay,
Right?
fair enough, fair enough. Well, you can go
And
and
he's
share this
also
with
very well
strangers.
aware of my lack of interest in physics. So he doesn't bore me with stories, unlike you. But please go on.
So
No, but please go on. Yes.
it was just so gravity was considered a solved problem. You have Newton's equations of the gravitational
Yeah.
equation, and we know how it's gonna work. It's just hard to compute because it's just one equation. It doesn't really tell us, and it doesn't tell us anything deeper about gravity. That's an issue as well. And there were hiccups. It doesn't really quite tell us how Mercury moves. It doesn't align with our experimental data. It doesn't predict it well. And so, but it was considered solved problem. कि यार ये हो गया. There's nothing to do
Mm.
here.
Mm.
And then Einstein comes up with his general theory of relativity, and that becomes a huge cornerstone of physics. In fact, a lot of the um, research in fundamental physics has been to unite theory of gravity with the theory of quantum physics.
I see.
So my point is just, I think telling a young researcher, this problem is done and dusted with. Don't spend your
Yeah.
time with this problem may not have given us that theory. And then of course
Yeah.
one could argue ki Vedant, I'm sure there have been thousands of people that you don't know the names of who did
Mm-hmm.
pursue these
Mm-hmm.
solved the problems and who didn't
Mm-hmm.
and who came up empty-handed. Why? Because
Mm-hmm.
well, they were solved problems.
Yeah.
But then I could also say ki yes, you're completely correct in that when you say that, but wasn't the return on Einstein making that bet a lot?
Yes, that
And
is
so
true.
yeah. No, I'm
But
not saying
but
tell
but
every
my
researcher to study.
Yeah, but my other perspective on that is there are a million other scientists who tried to pursue already solved ideas and failed, but we know only about the one that succeeded, right?
Of course,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, the same logic, young people say that I don't need to go to college. I'm just going to do a startup in my garage or my parents' garage. Sorry.
Mm.
It's the same idea, right? That I'm just going to get the next unicorn out of my parents' garage because look, XYZ also did it. I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg or I don't know who else did it, but Bill Gates, whatever. Um, but then we also don't know of like the million other people who attempted to do it and couldn't quite make it. Right?
Of
So
course, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So again, I completely agree. Um, I think so. All I'm saying is, I think it'll be fair or perhaps good to have a balance between the two. As in,
Mhm.
not saying कि यार ये इसको छोड़ दो, this is a waste of your time, but also not saying that you should definitely pursue it if you think you can do it, but
No, so
leaving
I
it.
think my perspective on this is that I think there should be enough people saying isko chhod do, isko mat karo, so that only the people who are extremely motivated stick around.
I see.
And then
See.
you have the resilience and the focus to actually go and solve the problem, right?
Mhm.
Because it's sort of you've gone through hell, so to speak, to try and fight your way to actually work on that problem. So the more resistance there is on the way, the more people will fiddle out. The people that fiddle out would never probably have been able to do it because you fiddled out, or
Mhm.
you threw the you put the white flag up. But the
Mhm.
people who say no, I'm going to keep doing it, have a hunger and a resilience that is exactly needed to actually get to a discovery 20 years later, maybe. Right? You
Right,
never know
right.
when that will happen, but then how much of the resilience can you have? It's the people who have the resilience for those number of years actually who might end up doing it.
I see. There's this really nice play. I cannot remember the name. Um, is it a play? Is it a math? You probably have heard of it. It's quite popular. Um, a
I
certain
also have no
ambiguity.
interest. Yeah, and
It's a
I
book.
also have no interest in a non-fiction. Uh,
No, no, this is fiction novel.
this is a fiction novel
Huh,
about
and
mathematics.
yes, I know, very surprising.
Yeah. What is
And
it
it's
called?
and the math there isn't like algebra or 2 plus 2 वगैरह.
Yeah.
There is there's written by mathematicians or people who have graduate degrees in math. Okay, let me put this one. It's called Certain Ambiguity, a novel by Gaurav Surya and Hartosh Singh Bal. Do you know Gaurav Bhatnagar? He was at Professor at Ashoka.
No, I
No.
don't know.
Okay.
Hmm.
Anyways, so this is a book. It's a fiction book, and it's about you
Okay.
know. So it's basically about, I'll just read the summary. It's a story about finding certainty in math and philosophy. And in a certain
Hmm.
ambiguity, we meet Ravi Kapoor, who travels to America to further his education. Ravi Kapoor is fascinated by mathematics and philosophy over there, and he finds out about his grandfather being jailed in the. Okay, this is a horrible summary. Okay, this is yeah, that's I'll do a better job than that. It's basically about philosoph. I mean, I think something that everyone doing math has thought of at some point. Is math
Hmm.
really reflecting reality? Do our axioms actually
Hmm.
reflect reality? Do they not? And what consequences do they have? Uh, and it's more specifically, it's about the Euclid's geometry and non-Euclidean geometry. You have Euclidean geometry which is completely consistent, works with our intuition, two parallel don't meet, great. And then you have non-Euclidean geometry, where mathematicians try to hunt for inconsistent contradictions for centuries to show that
Hmm.
this geometry is absurd, and yet they don't find it. In fact,
Hmm.
it's applied in general relativity, which is extremely spooky because they have two different geometries showing you two different things. Which axiom system is the correct one? So this
You're
philosophical
doing
conundrum.
you're doing a great job of ensuring I never read this book.
Oh, आपका interest यहाँ
Sorry.
बिल्कुल भी नहीं है.
No, not at all. I mean, I have no interest in like in my free time. If I read all the time. If I pick up a
I
book
see.
that has me to think about mathematics, I do that 16 hours a day as it is. I don't want to do
Yeah, I
it when
get
I'm
that.
reading a book. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. No, but the thing is, it's
Yeah.
framed as a fiction novel. You don't come away
Yeah.
with the book कि ये math book है. You come away कि अच्छा
I
this
see.
was the tension, this was the plot and all.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's a better
So
sell. Yeah.
yeah. So I can't read
Okay,
math
cool.
books after my classes as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
I'll
completely get that.
I'll put it on my Goodreads and try and see if I can get.
No, anyways, my point with the book was just what was my point with the book? My point of the book was one of the characters are obsessed with solving some really hard conjecture and number theory. I don't think it was Riemann hypothesis, some other thing.
Hmm.
And the story is about so I think that I don't know.
The perseverance, resilience that one needs to sort of keep fighting through it, and
But
people
he
might
didn't
be
solve it.
telling,
He became crazy, and that
yeah.
spilled over to his family. He became a crank. So that doesn't really support my point, but
Yeah.
Anyways,
No,
it's the point nonetheless.
but that's fair. I mean, it's a really tough path to be on. And in general, I think doing a PhD, sort of, I'm digressing now, but doing a PhD is 90% about resilience, for me.
It's
It's
mildly
90% about
90%.
resilience. Uh, I mean, I've never thought of myself as being a very intelligent person. I'm just about maybe above average intelligence. And I did a pretty good PhD, and I think pretty decent, I would say, PhD. And have had a decent career so far. I hope to make more of it in the future, but I think almost all of it is just about being resilient. And sort of, I mean, now I don't think I need to be resilient as an active choice. It's just trained into me, like a work ethic is trained into me now. We were talking about having meetings at like 9 in the morning on a Saturday. So um, that's all. That's already like automatically a part of it. But I think it's more during the PhD. It was just, there are folks who. I mean, okay. So we were talking about like going to amazing universities and so on, right in the beginning. And I know you were joking maybe, but it is a fact, I would say. And you can verify this by going to Math Genealogy. Okay, I don't know
Mm.
if you know Math Genealogy is a website where you can
The
sort of
tree.
see, yeah, you can see like
Uh-huh.
you can start with a somewhat like start with somebody at Ashoka. Like, oh yeah, great choice would be Sandeep. Start with Sandeep Janeja. His
Mm.
advisor is Peter Glynn.
Mm.
Okay. And then Peter Glynn's advisor, I think, is Iglehart. And
Mm.
then you keep going up. And then as you keep going up, you get a list of all of their PhD students.
I see.
Okay. So all of Sandeep's PhD students, then Peter Glynn's PhD students, and so on. And if can I share my screen? Let's do this
Oh yeah,
exercise.
that'll be great.
Okay.
What
So
is this?
maths genealogy. Let me do this exercise for us. I'm going to share my screen and
Yeah. So for Sandeep Juneja, I only got the advisor. No one else.
okay. Well, this is still loading. I don't
तो
know.
good to know वहाँ भी internet खराब है.
Uh,
I thought it's just a Ashoka
okay.
thing.
No, no. So sometimes it's the DNS. It's not kharab typically, but something's stopping it. So we can start with. If you can open it, then go ahead and open it.
I've tried. No, on my iPad is I'm not risking it. This thing loves to malfunction.
Okay.
Like that's the only thing it does. But yeah.
Sometimes IIT Kanpur stops it. 1 second.
Mm.
Because there's like these uh, weird exceptions it makes on some websites that are not allowed. And
Oh, even for
okay,
matching.
perfect. Yeah. So now I VPN to New York, and now I can put it. Okay.
Oh,
Um,
great.
great. So let's say I do. Sorry, Sandeep. I'll just start with him. Okay. So I guess Sandeep's information is not here, which is fine. We can go to Peter Glynn, right? Peter
So
Glynn.
need
Typically,
some
it also doesn't do like a very good thing with
non-Western.
Indian environment. Yeah.
I figured.
Okay. Let's go to Peter Glynn. Great. Okay. These are all of Peter Glynn's students.
My God, these are PhD students or postdocs.
These are all of PhD students.
I see. It's a
Okay.
lot.
Now, but it's a lot. But a great way to now understand that not every PhD student that you will be at Stanford University is going to hit it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know these people by name, so it's possible they are very accomplished people in all over the world. But just as from academic perspective, Jose Blanchett is a student with 29 other descendants. So Jose Blanchett graduated many other students. Halim Demirji has graduated some other students, and a couple of other people have graduated many other students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now there's some numbers missing because I know Sandeep has also graduated many other students,
Mm-hmm.
but that is to say that a lot of the people that graduate also from Stanford University or Harvard and places like that are not necessarily going to be like amazing researchers in the future, right? And if I
Mhm.
think of the number of descendants as being an indicator of that, like how many students have you supervised, that gives a sense of how much productivity you've had or how much you've contributed to the research environment.
Mhm.
So let's go to Iglehart, and I've done this exercise before. Iglehart was clearly uh, much more productive, or at least there's a lot more data. And it also
Mhm.
goes into much older environments, right? So now you're
Mhm.
in like the 1960s and 50s where competition was low, industry jobs were low, and so on. Okay, so these are reasonable. And let's go to Samuel Carlin, who was apparently one of the advisors. And then here again, you'll see there are people who don't necessarily have a ton of descendants either, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but for more contemporary situation, we'll see a lot of people in maths genealogy, and stop sharing, who actually don't necessarily, they graduate students who go on to do wonderful things in life, but maybe not doing, top-notch research at various places. And that's just something to keep in mind, because what that tells you is you've completed a PhD, but you're not necessarily going to go into like A level, um, or A star level research, because people, over time you change as a person, you grow out of the interests that you possibly had in the beginning. You also have career moves that you're no longer interested in academia, particularly in statistics. Folks go into industry quite a fair bit, and become very successful there as well. But this idea that sometimes people have, young people particularly, that doing a PhD means you are just like thinking about science the whole time,
Um,
and you're just like, you have this sort of like this crazy passion towards the subject. And I see so many young people at IIT Kanpur who don't pursue a PhD because they feel they are not this type. And that's something I sort of like keep fighting on with students, not fighting, but like keep sort of trying to debunk that a little bit and say, you don't have to be consumed by this topic to
mm,
pursue a research career in it or to pursue a PhD in it. And particularly in statistics, which is so hireable in industry, the PhD allows you to become a problem solver,
mm,
to become somebody who's resilient enough to take a problem and continue hacking away at it until a solution arrives. And
mm.
that's really what industry is looking for, right? And so this idea that you must be like, especially in math and physics and maybe some of statistics, people really have this idea you must be wicked smart and wicked smart. And I think wicked smart only gets you so far, because wicked
Right.
smart sometimes means that you never really struggled, you never really failed. And so once the first paper is rejected or the first application is rejected, you get this sort of jolt of uh, rejection and failure that you have not trained yourself to get used to, right? That and so resilience is when it's like, oh yeah, I failed, like I have failed many other times. Great, I'll keep ahead, keep going, and sort of like just brushing things off and say, okay, I'll just keep at it. It sort of
Yeah.
turns out to be far more important.
Are you also speaking from your own experience? Like you talked about a lot of things there. So just say when
Yeah, no, go ahead.
yeah. So when you were doing your PhD, is that something that you wish you knew more? You know, I can do a PhD even though I may not be wildly into the field that I'm into, that I'm pursuing right now.
Hmm.
Also knowing that I can do a PhD for 5 years and I don't have to become an academic. I can always choose to do something
Yeah.
else, or that my PhD training is not necessarily training me to be just an academic, but a more resilient problem
Hmm.
solver in general. Do you think these are things you wish you knew back then, or some things you already knew? Yeah,
So some things I already knew. I certainly knew that doing a PhD doesn't mean that I need to stick to an academic career. Particularly being in statistics, when I applied for a PhD in statistics, I knew people. I was doing a part-time, not part-time, sorry, I was doing a full-time master's, but at Rutgers. But I was surrounded by people who were doing part-time masters, and the faculty also. Some of our faculty were from industry.
how does that
Um,
work? Master's degree and a PhD simultaneously.
No. I was doing a master's at Rutgers at the time, and other master's students, some of them were pursuing a part-time master's, and some of
Okay.
our instructors were from industry as well.
I see.
And
Okay.
these instructors were PhDs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, okay, these people have sort of opted to come in and teach once a week, but have like this whole career in industry as well, and their
Yeah.
PhDs. So it was clear to me that there's lots of avenues, and because I did a master's in the US, I didn't immediately get into a PhD program there. So I sort of already understood the landscape that, oh, there's lots of avenues for career afterwards. I don't need to be, especially in statistics, I didn't need to be focused on just academia. So I already knew that. The resilience part also, I pretty much knew. I understood that that's what, for me, it was just like, oh, I just want to like keep studying what I like, and we see there's enough other things I can do afterwards. So I'll just keep studying and keep making sure I'm sort of learning something, and I'll figure out what I want to do eventually. Then I figured out, and like after my first or second year, I sort of like academic pursuits more, and that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah. So I knew some of that already.
Okay. Okay. That's but do you think that's something students currently? Okay. I mean, you already said that. आजकल students को नहीं लगता
Yeah,
इतना.
I think it really helps that I was not from like a premier undergraduate research institute. I mean, I did go to a pretty good undergraduate college, but I went to Delhi University, right?
Mhm.
So with Delhi University, I mean, what we were studying there, I don't know what the syllabus is now exactly, but it wasn't so that I had that it was like extremely rigorous or anything like that. It's a usual university system setup, and so yeah, so I was not in like this place where I was facing like these very difficult courses or extremely challenging environments. And in fact, I had some of that once I moved to Rutgers, because I was fairly comfortable during my undergraduate. I didn't do amazingly well on anything, but I was a lazy child. Like I was a lazy student. I never enjoyed studying beyond the classroom. I just went to classes. Um, and I sort of like just got like reasonable marks, and I was very happy with reasonable marks. And then I went for my master's. I really struggled. So first, I actually pursued a master's in mathematics,
This
and
is at
for
Rutgers.
some at Rutgers, I
I
got
see.
in with a master's of mathematics, and I was the only master's student amongst a class of other 8 PhD students.
Mm.
So I was sitting in all of their coursework, and then they would go ahead and do a PhD, and I was supposed to graduate with a master's in mathematics. And I just was so confused that what in the world am I being taught right now? Because it was so different from the Delhi University topics that I had read.
Mm.
I was still being taught group theory, but it did not seem like group theory or analysis or whatever else these courses were in. I was so confused as to what was going on,
Like they seemed
and I
harder.
really struggled. Um, yeah, definitely harder, and yeah, a lot more challenging for me. So, and also, I just couldn't get any interest in it anymore. I don't know,
Mm.
something happened where I just had no interest in it either. And I think it was probably because it was so much harder. And for me, I think I pretty much sailed through undergraduate without really working hard. And so I didn't really know this idea that I can actually go back and read. Like, like I would just sit in class and like say, yeah,
And
that
get
makes sense.
things.
Oh, yeah. And if it doesn't make sense, fine. It doesn't make sense. I'll figure it out later. But the things that didn't make sense we had very good instructors as well. So the things that didn't make sense were relatively small in number, and Delhi University exams used to also be very like, I know what's going to come, so I can coast through exams. I don't have a
Predictable in that
problem.
sense.
Yeah, predictable in that sense. So yeah, suddenly I was in these classrooms where I didn't understand, and I didn't have the work ethic and the habit of going back and like studying things. I also realized when I moved there, I didn't know what office hours meant.
I
So
see.
off because it was not a thing. So
Uh,
people said, like, on the template or something, it said office hours. I say, okay, why are you telling me at what time you will be in the office? Like, okay, great, you'll be in the office for this 1 hour in the whole week. Okay, what do I do with this information? Like, I didn't know it was an invitation to come.
right,
So,
right.
so Because that was never communicated. Like, this is what office hours meant, because like it's sort of understood what it means, and I didn't really know to ask anybody. Anyway, and so what I did is I dropped out of all of my courses. I withdrew from all of my courses except for like a graph theory course that was an undergrad level course that I was like, oh, this is okay. I like this. And so I got like W's on my transcript. I withdrew, and then after like a couple of weeks of sulking, I sort of went and sat through some of the other courses. So I went into a CS class, computer science class, and I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on because I didn't have a C. I have a BA in mathematics, so I
I
didn't
see.
know what operating systems were. Still don't know. And then I happened to also be in a statistics course, and I went and sat down. And what was starkly different, at least in the beginning, is I understood how the instructor went from the one step to the next step to the next step to the next step. And this was like news to me because maths courses I couldn't do this.
Math
Any like
in
in the
Rutgers or DU maybe?
yeah, the course is Nini in Rutgers. So
Acha,
the
acha,
course
okay.
I was in math, I that wouldn't happen. That I didn't know how in the world the instructor is going from one step to the other. In the statistics course, I had no idea what this person was talking about. They were talking about normal and t distributions, but I just could understand the math. Like you took root n and you took it on this side, and your x comes on this side. And I was like, oh, this I know. Great, I will do a master's in statistics. Like that's it. I was like, okay, I can do this. I can just like get a degree and I'll figure it out. And so that fall semester, I sort of didn't do much except I spoke to the stats department and I showed them my grade and transcripts and background. And they said, yeah, you can join a master's program from next semester if you want. And I say, great. And so I moved to the statistics department there. And then after one semester, I like, okay, I sort of get now what's going on. Um, and and then I applied for a PhD because I was like interested in just studying more. And then I finished the master's in 3 semesters.
Oh,
And then I went
uh,
to the PhD.
I see. You applied for PhD, I think Minnesota में या फिर Rutgers only.
Yeah. No, no, Minnesota. I applied at lots of places, but I eventually went to Rutgers. I went to Minnesota.
I see. How? Okay, so someone I was talking to, I can't remember, Ojas or was it Sarvesh? One of them I was talking to about, Professor, I'll be talking to Professor Dutika, what do you think and all. So we were just chatting and they were like, you should definitely ask her how she got into math from statistics. Oh, statistics from
Oh, it's
math.
just from that. Yeah, yeah. This is how
Yeah.
I got
So,
into it. It was a desperation. I was desperate to find something that I understood. Truly, it was just that. And I just needed a confidence boost that I can understand something. And so I understood the math about it. And then there was a lot of challenges of philosophically understanding what statistics is as a field, which I really did in during my PhD,
oh,
because philosophically it's a very different field.
Uh,
Yeah.
so you went for your PhD then. How was your
Hmm.
first 2 years? Because as I'm assuming first 2 years में coursework ही होगा, the master's
Hmm.
coursework similar to what you might have done at Rutgers.
Very
Uh,
different. So
I
very
see.
different coursework. So the US now it's changed a little bit, but when I started in 2012 for my PhD, um, and so the US system then was there were hardly any or many undergraduate programs in statistics. And so
How back
most
is
people,
this?
2012, right? So 14 years ago.
I see. Okay.
So, I mean, there were programs. I'm not like Minnesota had a very good undergraduate program. Rutgers had but they were very small classes, extremely
Mm-hmm.
small major cohorts. And it was very common for folks pursuing, it is still very common for folks pursuing a PhD in statistics to actually not come with an undergraduate in statistics. They would have
Mm-hmm.
had an undergraduate in mathematics, in economics, in physics, in computer science, and would have taken elective courses in statistics and then would be pursuing a PhD. The master's coursework that I had at Rutgers was very industry focused. So we did very little theory, and we did a lot more implementation. And I look back and there were lots of cool classes, but there was not as much focus on understanding the theoretical concepts. It was more on how do you implement this. And that was also because a lot of the students were from industry because they were pursuing part-time, because this is close to New York City, right? So it's like 50
Right.
minutes from New York City. And so there's a lot of people from the pharma industry, from the finance industry. who would be pursuing a part-time master. So it was sort of geared towards them. So my first 2 years in the PhD were my first time of actually taking a structured coursework that was theoretically intended towards understanding the fundamental concepts of statistics. And I was also one of the few students who did not, from India, who did not have an undergraduate in statistics. So Indian students were like maybe 7 students overall, and almost everybody came with a rigorous degree in statistics. So I mean, that was okay because there were American students who did not also come with statistics. So it was a nice environment overall. And the first year was a little bit challenging, but we were a really good group and cohort of students. We were all friends. We would come together every week and, solve problems, talk to each other, fiddle around on the blackboard, on our whiteboards, trying to discuss what's going on. So it was a great learning experience. Yeah. And then the second, because you mentioned the second master's, I mean, many people do this, but you get a master's on the way for free, right? So that was just like a consequence. Like before when I was doing the paperwork or getting my PhD, finally they said, hey, your master's degree is sitting, you just need to sign it. I said, okay, fine. And then I signed it, and then I got another master's.
I see. How was your PhD experience, since we are talking about your
Oh, it couldn't have been better.
I see.
Yeah. I think I'm a very bad data point because I'm extremely biased, but I will say your PhD experience is almost entirely going to be dictated by your PhD advisor. And so the one thing I tell all undergraduate students that work, pretty much, yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, of course, there are some instances where you maybe have bad company or you don't have very good logistical support and things like that, especially if you're an experimental and then there's no NMR facilities around in your institute. And those things are challenging, of course, but your sort of emotional health is most impacted by your PhD advisor, because your advisor is setting the expectation of what needs to get done and how it needs to get done and how much of it are you accountable for. So my experience was fantastic. I mean, I'm at this point, my PhD advisor and I are great friends as well. And he just set up a very, very nice environment where, I went to him whenever I needed to go to him, which was very often. Just ask like a quick question and he'd say, okay, what else is happening? And then we chat a little bit. And I'd discuss some problems, what I'm facing. And he was always available and never said, you need to get this done immediately. Which is exactly what I needed, because after going through some of the struggles at Rutgers, I was very self-motivated to follow, have my own deadlines and work with my own sort of, I had my own goals and I wanted to ensure I do X, Y, Z. And so I was already very self-motivated. I did not need somebody to be like a chuddy and said, no, you must do this. A lot of students really like that, would like somebody who sort of quote unquote disciplines or sets deadlines or, I didn't need that. So what my advice to a lot of students here at IIT Kanpur is always do not choose the area. Choose the advisor. Choose the person, because a good advisor will accommodate for your interests as much as they can within their area. And then, worst case, you do a PhD that you're not exceptionally interested in, but you have some interest in. Obviously, you must have some interest in the general topic. That's the worst case scenario. But at least you'll have support and guidance from an advisor who tells you what academia and building an academic career looks like. Because I also think an advisor's job is not just to get you to finish your thesis, and this is what I think my advisor did amazingly well, is to also educate you on the various other aspects of academia. So, we have to review papers, we have to organize conferences and workshops, and we have to give talks. We have to, supervise our own PhD students and master students, and we have to go teach. And there's all of these other aspects of academic journey that you have very little other source on any guidance for. It's, most of my time now as somebody who has a reasonably large group, goes in people management and time management. And I thought I got a lot of like informal advice and direction through my 5 years working with my advisor, because after we spoke about the research question that I had, we spoke half an hour also about what else was happening. Right? Oh, there's a workshop going on. This is how, and he'd do great things like ask me for my opinion on like, what do you think? Do you, or something I now do, I took from him, is like a seminar speaker came and gave a talk, and he would find any student the next day or the afternoon, and a lot of our faculty would do this, would just stop the student and say, what do you think of that talk?
Hmm.
To actually give value to your opinion, and then create a space where I say, well, that was like rubbish. It was like horrible talk. And then they'd say, you know what? I agree. I think that was not very well done. How do you think that person could have improved? And it forced me to be like, oh, if I was giving that talk, how would I do it? And that sort of, reinforces and gives you some soft skills and understanding. So these type of things happened all the time, which really made it a great environment to come out from.
I feel like some of the things that you said just seem to me like, socializing. How do you talk to people?
Mhm. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah,
So it seems a bit,
truly.
I mean, like you're saying, you valued that experience a lot. And that's these reasons are, or these instances of your advisor giving value to your opinion, asking you questions
Hmm.
about what you think of things, and just having a more conversational attitude. Those were really great. But it makes me think that since
Hmm.
ये stand out करा आपके experience में, this is probably not how most PhD experiences would go. As in, this had to
Yeah,
contrast against something,
great.
right?
Absolutely. I,
Which,
I
yeah.
definitely think it contrasts to the environment here to some extent. And that is because, like, my experience in the US was you don't have a hierarchy between the faculty and the students, except for this unsaid hierarchy of someone having more experience than you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only hierarchy, right? Like, I will
Yes.
listen to my advisor, what they are saying, because they have more experience, not because they're my boss,
I
or I
see.
am in a lower hierarchy to them, that I must listen to them. So,
Uh-huh.
for example, like a lot of students, like the advisor said something, and a student was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to do this." And I was like, "Fine, go ahead." You know, because there wasn't this social hierarchy, but in our country, typically there's also a social hierarchy, right? And so the institutes are also like little hierarchically built. And so to actually create an environment within that, to actually ask the student, hey, what did you think? Let's talk as to human beings on an equal level and just exchange ideas becomes a little challenging. And to be very honest with you, I started from that because I valued that experience so much. I started from that here. And I realized sometimes students have no idea how to take that either, because they also come from a very hierarchical society.
Uh-huh.
Right. So, for example, I tried when I was in the beginning, I tried to tell students, hey, you don't have to call me ma'am. Like, it makes no sense to me because, in 5 years, you'll graduate, you'll become a colleague of mine. Then, you shouldn't be calling me ma'am. Um, and it became very difficult for them. They got very awkward. And also, like, sometimes when these lines are important to have, because if there's no lines, then the students don't know what is the line, because there is always the line. And so that also becomes a little challenging, especially if there are like gender issues involved there as well. And so I sort of finally said, okay, you know what? I can't really bring all of the American attitude here, because this is a different environment, right? We live again as a subcapsule of the main society. But as much as possible, I will try to at least give students as much autonomy as possible. But I mean, just a couple of days ago, I told a PhD student of mine who chose a certain notation, and I told them, listen, I understand you have certain notations you like. I don't like this notation. Here's what's going to happen. While you and I are working together, we will use the notation I like. After you graduate, you use the notation you like. No problem. Okay. And I told her it's purely because right now I don't have the time to actually keep correcting in my brain, keep telling myself, no, this notation's okay. Like, she wants this. I just don't have the time. It's a small thing, it's a notation. right? She wants to call something X, I want to call something X star, for example. And for me, that X star makes sense to me, and that's where I'm comfortable. And writing X will waste twice amount of time because I will first write X star and have to delete the star, right? If I'm writing. So it's just like, it's just going to save me some time and mental energy. And compared to you, I have a little of that to give. So right now, I will do this, but feel free to do whatever you want after you leave. Like that's your call.
Hmm.
And sometimes my advisor did that as well and said, okay, I like to do this. Can we please just do this? And he was a lot more, can we please just do this? And I just say, we're just doing this while you're here. And then you feel free to do whatever you want on your next project with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's because a student if I tell a student, do call it whatever you want, then the person would be like, oh my God, what will ma'am like? As opposed to what do I want to do, right? And so there's a lot of like even the social learning of how do you go from just calling somebody, like treating somebody as your, guru, whatever is like in our environment, in our society of how that works, to actually being able to tell them your honest opinion that the speaker that they invited gave a horrible talk, right? And that might be seen as disrespectful, but I actually want to know what they thought about it. And so how do I actually manage that? It requires still a little bit of like ensuring that there's still that I can't break the hierarchy completely, but I try to give as much autonomy to the students as I can.
The office politics that I feel like we constantly hear from. Like I hear that a lot from my mom. और families में तो होता है ना कि office में ये हो गया, इसने वो बोल दिया, इनने ये कर दिया.
Sure. Yeah.
I wonder how much of that is exclusive to India because of our because of the respect we give people solely because of their where they are on the hierarchical ladder. So
Yeah, but I think there's other issues that like I think in the non-Indian environment also there are other issues also because the Indian environment is a little lax in professionalism.
labs
Not
मतलब
all in, well, it's not completely high on the professional standards set by the West because we have our own understandings of what is the professional way of working.
mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more allowance for digressing from like very like on the line professional behavior in the Indian environment, whereas not so much in the US environment. So I think those politics come in a little bit more.
What do you mean? Like an example, perhaps?
Um, like a very bad example is, one can show up in open-toed sandals and it's okay.
इंडिया में वहां या बाहर?
In India.
अच्छा हाँ.
In an industry environment, like it's okay because it's summer, it's whatever, right? In the American environment, in a corporate environment, particularly academia, everything flies. In a corporate environment, it's like, no, this is breaking the professional. I mean, this is a
Dress
very
code.
small example. Yeah. So it's sort of like that because also like our understanding of dress code, for example, is very
British.
Western inspired with our own Indian exceptions. Like it's still unclear to me what is professional dressing for Indian women, right? It's completely unclear. Like there's always like if you go to suit and tie uh, uh, get together, that's always meant for men, right? Now what do women do? Sari is also okay, a suit is also okay, and a cocktail dress or whatever it's called is also okay. So what are the exceptions and where do I draw the line? Like what is there's no equivalent of a suit and tie.
हाँ.
Right? And so we're still in this space where we don't quite know, and I don't think it's going to converge very soon as to what is considered a professional. Like, for example, a woman showing up in a sari is still professional, but a guy showing up in dhoti kurta will not be professional, even though both are traditional attires.
Interesting. Right.
Right? So there are these things and environments where we don't quite know how to. I mean, women have only just coming into the force, right? But last 20, 30 years. So we still don't know what is the expectation of professional dress code there.
Yeah.
And so it's like everything flies. Like one can't say that no, a sari isn't allowed 30 years ago because then it's like, wait a minute, you want me to wear this? This is like against our XYZ. Right? You want me to wear like a professional suit, which is not something I wear. I can't wear a skirt 30 years ago, for example. And so, okay, yes, of course, you're right. We'll allow for a sari. Sari makes sense. And so now sari makes sense. A kurta makes sense. A professional, like a three-piece suit makes sense. Everything makes sense now. But so then what is the professional attire? No idea.
Yeah. Since we
Right?
are on the theme
So,
of gender, um,
mhm.
although I am wary about your time,
Yeah, very,
so you have
very, very
throat.
close on that.
Huh. So I don't know if I should open
We'll
up a
wrap
new
up
theme.
as you wish, maybe 10 minutes or so. I'm happy to engage.
मतलब हाँ मतलब I just wanted to touch upon the theme of gender since we did start talking
Mhm.
about it. But I mean, आप बताओ आपका गला तो नहीं थक गया?
No, I'm okay. Maybe 10 minutes
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
then we can sign off. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it was just the question of gender. It was that, you know, academia and pretty much every corporate field ever has been traditionally male dominated. Like you said, it's only very recently that in the
Mhm.
past 25, 30 years that women have entered the workforce. So in your
Yeah.
experience, I mean, was there a like, did you ever feel you were being, perhaps treated a bit differently, or perhaps you would have liked more women mentors, or did the lack of women mentors in academia was that not a hurdle, but दिख रहा था कि अच्छा all the names I'm reading in
Mhm.
textbooks they are all male names, specifically white male
Mhm.
names.
Mhm.
Was that or was that a huge thing in your journey, or not quite?
Um, I think yes and no. I think slightly. I have a slightly different journey in STEM, and it's because I went to a liberal arts all women's college for my undergrad.
अच्छा हाँ.
So,
What was the college? Do you
because
know?
I was at Lady Shriram College, so LSR
Right, understand,
in
right.
South Delhi. So that meant that I was now in a space where in my undergrad in math classes there were only women.
Hmm.
Now that's very rare in if you think of math undergrad programs all over the country, all
Yeah.
over the world, right? And so for me, it was like, uh, I mean, in my high school, the top students, the top two, three students were all girls, which is also which is fairly common in schools because there's various social reasons for that. And then for my college, I was in an all women's college. So, 43 other female students in my classroom. We had all female instructors as well until my last
Hmm.
year when we got a male instructor. So, till my undergrad, I was sort of living in this small bubble
Hmm.
where, I had not been exposed to these ideas that women are not really doing this. Of course, I knew them in theory. Theoretically, I knew them, but I hadn't really faced and like dealt with them. And my mother is somebody who has a background in mathematics, so I grew up like with my mom being an amazing instructor and teacher as well. So whenever, although I was a horrible student in terms of very difficult to teach, so she would rarely teach me. But when I was very young, like fifth, sixth, seventh class, then she would like try to explain concepts to me. And after that, I was like extremely like mostly independent. So I hadn't really faced that much. And then when I went to my master's, I had my own other struggles because I was suddenly like, now struggling in this environment. But that was like my personal individual struggle. It wasn't a gendered struggle. Um, and so finally, when I went into my PhD, is when I was faced with this realization that I was actually the only female person in my cohort of 10 PhD students that particular year. And I mean, all of my other friends, other people in the cohort were very nice people, very good friends of mine still. But yes, then I started thinking a little bit more about that. Wait a minute, what's going on? But then also, I was a non. I was because I was in that undergraduate environment. I was never really shy of asking questions or engaging in discussions because it was all women, which is
Hmm.
typically the main deterrent for female students engaging in a classroom because there's three women and 45 men or even more. And so that's the main deterrent. And those habits had not come in. I had already developed the habit of engaging in the classroom. And so I was okay going in the classroom, asking my questions and doing that. And I never thought anything of it because, I was like completely, I'd already like developed these habits, and they stayed with me. Like they say, I'm curious, I'm going to ask my question, I'm going to engage with the faculty, I'm going to talk to them after class, or I'm going to do all of that and not diminish myself in any way. And so that was already part of who I was. I'd speak about an experience not of mine, but of a friend of mine who was in an IIT. And so a friend of mine also around the similar time of going into college around 2007 and 2008, and she was pursuing computer science. And many years later, I asked her how was her experience. I'd already become a faculty here, so I wanted to know how her experience was.
As
And
an
then
undergrad.
as an undergrad. And then she gave me more, I think talking to her gave me a better idea of what it is like for undergraduate students, because I had a very different undergraduate experience. And so her experience was there were 2 women in the class and 50 men. And so now the other female student in the class was not somebody she really gelled with, which is very much possible because even in a class of like 50 male students, like you get along with only 5. One gets along with only 5 students, right, or 6 students. So they were okay. They were acquaintances, but didn't really like get along with each other. And she was a very good student. And so there would be assignments shared, and then they had 10 questions, and people would work on them together. Now she would essentially be working on them by herself, and she would get, let's say, 7 out of those 10 questions, but those 3 questions she didn't know how to answer. But now she was in this situation where all of these other guys are talking to each other. And some people get 3 questions, some 4 questions, some 8 questions, some 2 questions. But collectively, the union of all of their questions makes 10 questions, all 10 questions, right? Now, she has answered 7 questions, doesn't know these 3. So she's always the asker. She goes in and she gets, hey, do you know questions 8, 9, 10? And after like the 4th, 5th time of this happening, she was made fun of, or she was like, you keep asking, you don't contribute anything, you don't know anything. And because this idea that she doesn't know, but then the thing is that she always knew more than most of these other kids. But it was just that she didn't have other sources locally in her bubble to complete her set of 10 questions. And so it was this very weird thing where after the 4th, 5th time of being insulted, she said, okay, I'm just going to submit my 7 questions. Like, that's it. Like, that's all I'm going to do. And and so she said that became a really, really difficult experience because eventually it affected her grades. It affected her grades because it's relative grading. All the men are sort of helping each other, right? And collaboration, let's say, is even allowed. I'm not sure if it was allowed or not. So that experience I didn't relate with at all, but I was like, oh, this makes a lot more sense. But in terms of having, I'll say I had great mentors throughout all men, but throughout my PhD and postdoc journey, both men, but very good and very supportive mentors who did not really, who were cognizant of the challenges of being a female student, but did not really do anything to adversely affect my experience. So they were very cognizant, and they understood why, and they even had conversations with me on how we can encourage more women to pursue this, and do I have any ideas about it and things like that. But yes, within the academic environment, I'm somebody who works a lot in theoretical topics and computational topics, which is even less represented in statistics from a female perspective.
I see.
And so most conferences I go to, I'm the only woman, or in a group, for example, or I'm one of the very few female people. This has changed in the last decade a little bit more. So it's sort of nice to be in environments where there's a lot more women around, but it's still like 5% or 10% or something like that. And that does, I think for me personally, it didn't really have a big effect because of my journey coming from an undergraduate place like that. But I think I'm extremely cognizant of how my presence positively potentially affects students. And so I have become extremely cognizant of that me being somewhere, if I after a talk or after a discussion, I'll have a lot of female students in the room come and talk to me about questions like this or how to manage their careers, and things like that. And that's happened a lot more. So now I have a better sense of the gendered different experience in academia from this gender perspective. There were small things here and there that of course have always happened, where there's stereotypes being set forth, or objectionable things said, and that's happened all the time. But it's happened all the time in life, not just in academia. And again, academia is just a subset. It's not like some hoity-toity subset where people are better in terms of their ideologies. It's just like a randomly chosen subset of the original society we live in. So it's going to suffer from some not so nice comments or judgments or stereotypes or bad experiences that people have.
I see. I would love to ask more questions, but again, time. But
Yeah,
just
we're
to,
little short.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay.
But no, I think this is good. I'm curious to see how it changes in the next 30 years. I mean, I'm sure when
I
you're,
think it's moving in the right
Mm,
direction. Yeah, I think I definitely agree. The way to do it is to have more representation. And also, to be very honest with you, one thing as much as I like women in like there are one thing that's happening nowadays is like there's a lot of fellowships and awards and stuff for women in blah. But I think sometimes that what happens is people think that means that these awards are for the women and these awards are not for the women. So for example, like let's say there's an award or some grant or something,
right,
or a student award. There's a special award for like a female student at Ashoka, okay, like
right,
the star female student.
right.
But if that same star female student is also the star student, and
Hmm.
there is a separate award for a star student, then there might be like, oh no, but she will already get this, no? So let's have somebody else get this other award,
Oh, why?
right?
They can't get both.
No. So I'm not. Of course, they can get both, but I think there's a little bit of an understanding where there's a little bit of this society being separated out, where awards and recognitions that are women centric, like for women, are are great. But then society, then general societies then pivots to say that okay, the general ones, if there's a woman version of it, then let's not give the general one to a woman, which
Oh,
is
let's
which
pick from
is
the men exclusively or no?
exactly, yeah. No, it's not just that
That
we'll
defeats
pick
the
from the men
purpose.
exclusively as a very conscious choice. So none of this is conscious. So I mean, it's almost like subconscious, where you say, wait, the women's were already getting this, so let's give this to somebody else, which is not really the point of it.
And by somebody else is
So
usually a male.
somebody else who's usually a
Uh,
male, yeah. So that's something that sort of we have to sort of, I think, as we increase opportunities for women, it's sort of one has to also understand that there is the general environment must still be equitable while also giving more opportunities. I think that's something we sort of have to be cognizant of. And sometimes, I mean, those thoughts come in my mind as well. It's like, oh, this is going. We should maybe get a man here, and then I have to stop myself and say, no, 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 wait a minute. This is like open for all, and then this is for women. Let's just keep that in mind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I think for even not necessarily just professors, but for anyone in the field, I think there should be kind of not perhaps a whole training thing, but perhaps a session on as you're being trained as an academic or a faculty on how
Mm.
you can be more sensitive to people who are underrepresented.
Yeah,
Like
all types of underrepresented. Mhm.
yeah, like I think I, as a guy, don't really have to worry about, asking questions or taking up space. Like all of this stuff, when I came to college, I had to learn by talking to other women. And वो मुझे
Mhm.
पता रहा है कि नहीं अच्छा हमारा ये experience रहा है. And I didn't even know that was a
Mhm.
thing. As in when
Yeah.
guys are the first to raise hands and to ask questions, how
Mhm.
that can be
Mhm.
intimidating to a woman in a class.
Mhm.
So I think having,
But I think it also comes from being in a. So, for example, in my classrooms, I try to if because women are typically not raising hands as much, if a female student raises a hand, I will make it a point to ensure that's the hand I choose. Unless I have now chosen two, three, too many, and I say, okay, now let me. So there's a subconscious back calculation I'm always doing, because there's I call them some of these students who always raise their hands, that are typically almost always boys. I call them enthu cutlets, like enthusiastic cutlets. And it's great to have some of those students in it, but that's why I have a rule in my class that you must raise your hand. Otherwise, I will not. I don't allow people to just say the answer, because I think it takes away not from a gendered experience, it takes away from the whole classroom. Because then what happens is the answer comes up and I have gotten the answer. This is the end of the conversation, but I want to actually converse, right? This is the top, let's say, 5 percentile of students who get it. I need to talk to the other 95 as well. So, and then if there's a student who sort of always raises his hand, I will look at him and I say, nope. And then he will put his hand down. And after like, a minute of waiting, I say, okay, anybody else wants to answer? And then he'll put his raise his hand up. So he know now, and I've done this year after year, and this is for all students. That because there's a lot of young men as well, who are very shy of they know the answer but are very shy of participating in a class, and they know the answer, and there just needs to be a little of coming out of that shell that needs to happen. And so I think that's one of the things I've sort of learned to do, is to acknowledge the enthusiastic cutlets and not dispirit them. And I say, okay, great, you've done 2 already, right? So you're not going to say anything right now. So I'll sort of tell them that, okay, great, I'm glad you're excited, but I'm going to wait on this. I'm going to see if anybody else wants to answer.
That
So
sounds lovely,
those are
actually.
some things
Yeah.
I think. Those are some things that I think, as instructors and people in charge of the classroom, that we should do in general, right? Because I mean, we can't expect a student body to naturally like fall into a stationary phase which is equitable in that sense, right? Because everybody's fighting for their own time, for their own success, and fighting their own demons, right? So, but when I have a say on how the classroom should go, and I'm the authority in the classroom, then I'm the person who should be using that authority in a way that helps as many students as possible, but also not discouraging the very active and very present student. And while acknowledging that they know what they're doing and I appreciate them in the classroom, also creating a space where all students are able to sort of flourish. And
Yeah.
because that's my responsibility, not the student's responsibility.
Yes. I would love to sit in one of your classes just to see how
Ajo,
you conduct that.
come to Kanpur. I'm
Yes.
happy to have you sit.
Next time I'm in Kanpur, I will definitely come. But I think अभी के
Sounds
लिए
great.
मैंने आपका बहुत टाइम खा लिया है. So
No, I
I feel a
appreciate it.
bit
I
guilty.
appreciate the chat and discussion. No, all good. It's
So this is
okay.
the
I,
first
I don't
one
have a
we're
meeting until after lunch, so you're
So
fine.
there is another meeting on Saturday.
There
Okay.
is another meeting. Yeah. Yeah, there are
Good.
more meetings.
Okay. Okay. But this was fun. This is the first episode I'm
Very
recording
nice.
after 2 year break. So
Ah, okay. Oh, lovely.
yeah, this is great to like. It's a good way to start. This was a fun one. I'm gonna
I know it
pause.
was very nice. It was great to have the questions and great insights that you had as well. Great questions as well. So I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I'm gonna pause recording. How do I?